Where does the Murat wish list start if you're playing Winnipeg Jets GM looking ahead to the deadline when it comes to forwards?
Your wish list, it's Timo Meier, 100%. And the reasons are many. First of all, I don't have to spend the $10 million to qualify him. That does not come out of, you know what I mean? But also, it's just a matter of quality and the way he gets his job done. He can do it any way. He has tremendous skill. He finishes from in and around the net. I mean, he's cruising at a point per game. He can play a chippy game, a physical game. And that's an element that's kind of missing amongst Winnipeg's other top six forwards. You're not going to get the same kind of physicality from Nikolai Ehlers or Kyle Connor, as special of players as those are. And as well, if you're Winnipeg and maybe you're staring down the pipe of Pierre-Luc Dubois exiting at some point, whether it's this summer or next or what have you, and you're looking for a player who can play a power forward type game, well, Timo Meier is that moving forward. Similarly, if you're not necessarily looking for that and you're looking at that $10 million qualifying offer and wow, that's too rich for us, you know, teams have spent assets and good players for one playoff run rentals in the past. And even if that's what Timo Meier becomes for the Winnipeg Jets in a season like this, I think he's the cream of the crop in terms of quality and playing style that would really help Winnipeg feel like it could win any which way, right? I think that there's a little bit of one dimension in that top six right now. I think that you hear general managers talk about Josh Anderson type players or Blake Coleman or what have you. Those players just aren't on the level that a Timo Meier is. And I think that's what makes him number one for me. I also got to say, Huss, I hear the Horvat stuff and I hear the theory, okay, there's some insulation in the center department. If Dubois' future is uncertain, or heck, even if Mark Scheifele's future is uncertain, having this third option that you might be able to extend, well, I don't see that extension happening. I don't see a player showing up for one stretch run who's ready to go UFA, suddenly putting that aside for anything less than a massive UFA payday. That I don't think that solves a whole lot of long-term problems for the Winnipeg Jets, nor would Jonathan Toews, though I understand he's a popular person and player around this city, and also would be able to handle third-line center duties with a pinch of top 6 minutes too.
Well, yeah, let's get into Toews because what's interesting about Toews, first of all, I think we realized that the cost for Toews would be much less than it would be for Horvat. I mean, you know, the Canucks are going to be looking at the old first-rounder prospect player package, and it sounds like it would be draft capital, not including a first-rounder, that the Chicago Blackhawks would be looking for at Toews. Like, Toews is not Timo Meier, but he also brings a number of things that I think help you win in the playoffs and could help the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, just as a fit based on what this team is right now, what are your thoughts on Toews and what he could bring and how impactful he'd be for the Jets?
Well, I mean, the advantages to Toews, I think, are the clear and obvious ones. I mean, he's been through multiple playoff runs. He's been all the way to the Stanley Cup championship. He's won it. He's been a key player on those teams. And I don't think that it's reasonable to expect him to be the player he was at his peak, which was darn near perfect on the ice at least. I don't think that that's a reasonable ask, but he's still producing a certain degree of offense. You can still believe that you can trust him in a two-way capacity. And I think that the things that he might give you, for example, he might be able to be a second line left wing if you don't think Cole Perfetti's going on any given night that you trust in those high leverage defensive situations. Or he might be that he might take the draws because he's so excellent at center, perhaps with Mark Scheifele on his right wing. You could imagine combinations where it gives Winnipeg a more 200-foot, proven, established, have been there and seen that look to their top six. Or if he's the third line center, then you can move Lowry up, as the Jets have been fond of doing in high leverage moments, protecting leads, et cetera, throughout this year. So I think that that's the type of flexibility up front that Winnipeg would like. The other thing that a player like Toews would give you, and certainly, adding Meier or whomever would also give you this, is another power play capable player. I don't think Adam Lowry is best suited for that job on that second power play unit. Yes, he wins the faceoffs. Yes, he's willing to go to the net. But if you're looking for something that's going to change the nature of that second power play unit, a player with a little more offensive experience and execution, I think like Jonathan Toews could help that unit. And I could begin to see that fit.
So would the juice be worth the squeeze of the Taves deal? I mean, I think at the end, you realize the cost wouldn't be. Listen, for asset wise, I think it makes sense for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, it's a huge contract, and you don't know whether some of it would be held back. I'm not sure that would be the only move. For what it would cost to get a player like Meier, it probably limits what else you have for other additions. How much of that do you think it makes sense for the Winnipeg Jets if you were talking about being able to get Taves and then still have the assets to add one of the other pieces on your wish list?
I mean, if you're able to do that, I think that takes a great degree of cap retention on Chicago's part. I think Winnipeg is well positioned to be able to absorb big contracts. But if you're looking to make multiple moves and those players coming in are getting paid, well, then you need a little bit of help, I think. And, it's almost blue sky territory, because if you don't think you're giving up your top assets, your first round pick, your Ville Heinola, your Chaz Lucius or any of the other recent draft picks for a guy like Taves, but you also feel like he fills that hole at third center, then you can presumably take whatever else you're going shopping with and looking and use that to look for other assets, either higher up the depth chart or on defense or what have you. And Winnipeg's in a unique spot where the West is a little bit open looking. Colorado's putting it together at some point, and eventually they're going to get Landeskog back, and that will add to what's been a strong stretch of play since January. So there are things to fear in the West. But if you're just comparing how good Winnipeg has been to the path that you might envision for them through the playoffs, even though we've seen them go down the road of trading futures and then seeing how that impacts the team, you can make the argument that this is the year to do it, and shopping for as many pieces as possible makes some sense if you're getting a Taves-like return on it with just a second or a third or whatever they'd have to give on it.
It's fun to talk about a Bo Horvat or a Timo Meier and Jonathan Taves and some very intriguing prospects up front. I can't help but think that if they could get an impact defenseman that could play behind Morrissey in a top four role, that might be the single most impactful move that the Winnipeg Jets could make.
I mean, compared to what Winnipeg is getting in those spots, I think so too. I'm not sure that that's their philosophy, and I can get into why I think that. But I think when you have, Neil Pionk sort of was asked to self-evaluate today, and he's saying, you know what, I could be defending better right now. And, the second power play is a little bit on me. I help run it, and we're not scoring a ton of points. At 5-on-5, he's had a lot of chances go against him this year. And whether you are a proponent of the eye test and just trusting sort of your own read of the passes he makes, given the outlets that he's had, or you're a metrics-based person, or both, you can say that this hasn't been Neil Pionk at his best. You have to go about 2 years ago and 3 years ago to see when he was really almost leading the Jets defense in quality, to have a situation where, other than Morrissey, there's another great defenseman on the team. And so if you could just flip the Pionk's metrics that you're getting today with maybe his first 2 seasons in Winnipeg, you'd feel a whole lot better about the team. And if you're not able to do that, and you can't snap your fingers and make Dustin Byfuglien reappear out of the ether, well, then you need, I think, a player who you can trust. And I don't think that it's hard for me to see Jacob Chychrun ending up in Winnipeg. It's hard for me to see Erik Karlsson ending up in Winnipeg. If you can snap your fingers and make those things happen, I think that's an area, that second pairing, where Winnipeg stands to have the most to gain. Because all of their players are good and capable and helpful, but I think they have a few too many 9s and 10s playing where you might like a king or an ace, behind the ace that has been Josh Morrissey all season long.
Yeah, then he certainly has been the ace. There's no doubt about that. When we talk about guys that have been rumored, certainly we hear the name Jacob Chychrun quite a bit, and Chychrun's very intriguing for a couple of reasons. I think he'd come in and be a big improvement and, would be a guy you could put out there for 20, 25 minutes a night that could play a ton. He's also got 2 years left on his deal at a pretty affordable 4.6. Now, that's great for Arizona because I think what they can demand for that goes up significantly as opposed to a player that might only be there for, for a couple months in a cup run. Ivan Provorov was the other guy that has been mentioned. Outside of those two guys, is there a player or two on the blue line that you might connect to the Winnipeg Jets, or at least might make sense for the Winnipeg Jets to sort of take a swing at?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just beginning to sort of wrap my head around that. I know that Vladislav Gavrikov is somebody that Columbus has been meant to depend on quite a bit this year with some other injuries. He's well over 20 minutes per night in Columbus, and he's playing top competition. He's playing a lot of PK minutes, even some power play, but there's no way that he would do that in Winnipeg. That might be the type of tier of defenseman that you start to imagine for Winnipeg. And then it depends on the prices. And if they sincerely believe that he'd be an upgrade to what they have in their top four, that's the type of player that I'm imagining, because I can't see it being Chychrun, because I think, like you say, his price is just going to be so sky high. At the same time, I think that there's maybe a recognition in Winnipeg that there are a lot of unique things about this season. What with, Dubois' uncertainty in his future, Morrissey having the year of his life, Hellebuck in his prime, everything's pointed just right that they might be willing to spend some top prospects, spend some top draft capital to help make sure. And beyond Gavrikov, but beyond the guys that we're always hearing about, I'm not really too sure who those guys are necessarily going to be at this stage.
Well, the bottom line is, teams aren't looking to just give up top four defensemen. Regardless of where you are in the standings, and the price is significant.